Welcome back to the 411 on Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, Blake Lovell, back here on Friday with some thoughts on a couple of things in the world of professional wrestling. Of course, WWE has its big Extreme Rules pay-per-view coming up this weekend, but before we get into that, let's talk about the match that everyone has been talking about, and that is Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson from AEW Dynamite's Grand Slam event at Arthur Ashe Stadium on Wednesday. And what a scene it was, really. So certainly we're going to talk about the match, but just the atmosphere, everything was pretty much what we thought it would be. A pretty unique deal there in terms of how many people are in attendance. You got 20,000 people there, and just an incredible atmosphere. And I think for them to start the show the way they did was pretty incredible to really look at how everything came together for this entire show, the build-up, all that, and but to have the match go on first, where you've got the crowd really at its highest, coming in ready for this big match, and then you deliver it to them right off the bat. I thought it was a great idea, and as we know, it made a lot more sense than putting it at the end, because if you're going to do the finish the way you're going to do it with the time limit draw, had you put it at the end of the show, I don't know other people have already talked about this, but had you put that at the end of the show, then you're risking, all right, you're the entire night, you're on edge probably. If you're Tony Khan and everyone else, you're thinking, all right, we've got to speed up this. We've got to speed up this. We've got to make sure we leave time for everything that we have to get to. If we're going to do this, 30-minute draw and all of that, we've got to be able to leave ourselves time. So realistically, you probably would have almost taken 45 minutes, I would think, out of the last hour of the show. And again, to plan to that level, to that minute, we've seen AEW have timing issues before, and so obviously it just made a whole lot more sense to lead the show off with that. Yeah, I thought it was exactly what you thought it would be from a match standpoint. I mean, I don't know what more you could really ask for outside of an actual finish, which I think the draw makes sense in this scenario because, like I mentioned this on Twitter, yes, you had the initial boos and stuff from the crowd, but I don't think that was sort of the, with the intent of boo, we're so unhappy with you for doing this. It was boo, we want this to keep going. We want there to be a winner. I think there's a big difference with that. And now I think that the reason it just makes a lot of sense to do the draw is, look, people want to see the rematch. After watching that, if you don't want to see the rematch, then I'm not sure what to tell you because that was pretty much as good as it gets from a wrestling standpoint. Just for a television match, for a pay-per-view match, it doesn't matter. You can put that anywhere, and that's going to hold up. Just how these two went at it, and Bryan Danielson had sort of alluded to this in some of the interviews he did leading up to this match. Was I think people may be surprised by just how aggressive, maybe how hard he goes. The violence aspect, and that's what he gave you here. Like he was. There were no signs of this being someone that was going to slow down here in AEW and just come over and, have some good matches and just kind of finish his career off that way. Like this guy is still going at the level that he's always wanted to go at. And for better or worse, we know there have been injury histories and all of that there, but he's not letting up. And I think it was pretty clear in terms of how this match played out. And like we've talked about before, I mean, this was never really a doubt in terms of what this match was going to do from just an actual, professional wrestling standpoint. You knew this was going to be something that was going to deliver, and you'd be very disappointed if not. I'm really glad that, they didn't sort of, I guess, take the direction of doing the interference and all this other stuff. They saved all that for after the match. You just wanted to see these two have a wrestling match, and that's exactly what they gave you. And I thought, again, it's hard to say that it could have been much better unless you would have just had a dedicated finish with a clear winner and a clear loser. But I just don't think you were ever going to get that here, knowing that the rematch is something that people will pay for. And I mean, it's very important is, not just do people want to see the rematch. There's a lot of people out there now that would be like, sure, I'll give you my, $50 to pay to watch this in the main event of whether that's Full Gear, whether that's somewhere else down the line. I just think that it's a very smart move the way they did it. I didn't think it was going to be the right move if they just had Danielson beat Omega right off the bat. It would have felt a lot similar seemingly to the situation with Christian where, Christian beats Omega and then they have the next match which, again, not that the next one was a bad match. I thought both matches were really good that those two had. But I think you wanted it to sort of leave that possibility open to where it's okay, the draw just it made more sense than anything. You weren't going to beat Omega, I don't think, in this scenario. You weren't going to beat Danielson in his first match. So I get it. Sometimes we criticize certain things, whether it's AEW, WWE, whoever, where we say, all right, well, just don't book the match if you don't, have sort of that way out of the situation. And WWE on Monday, we talked about it, like they gave you a finish with a triple threat match with Reigns and Big E and Lashley, and they actually gave you a winner and a loser. But it's just you're comparing apples and oranges here in terms of just the differences between these two matches. I think with where things stood for the parties involved, and it just the wrestling is what you wanted to see here from Omega and Danielson. You just wanted to experience this match, and now I think it's set up for them to perhaps have just as good of a match or even better if they do decide to go with this on pay-per-view eventually. Which I mean, I think that's the obvious direction. It's just a matter, I think, of when that's going to happen. Probably is the biggest question at this point. And really, I mean, again, does that happen at Full Gear? Is that the next step, or does Hangman come back? There's just a lot of different things, I think, and directions they can go in with this. But the match was excellent. I know I've seen a lot of people, talking about, where does this rank in terms of Dynamite matches and all that. I mean, it's just, I don't know how you don't put it right there, either at the top or very close. I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There have been a lot of matches. We've watched a lot of wrestling since Dynamite has started, a couple years ago now. But it's you just think about it. It was a special match. It was a special atmosphere, and just tremendous work by two of the best in the world. No doubt about that. If you look at Cage Match, which we always refer to, just in 2021, if we look at it that way, it is currently, I think it is fourth in terms of just the ratings on Cage Match. Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer Newsletter, he gave it 5 stars. And I've seen a lot of people give it that. Depending on if you use the rating system, the star ratings and all that, that's kind of your your baseline for everything. But of course, Ilya Dragunov and Walter is still at the very top on Cage Match in terms of matches this year. Really, just the past 2 years, actually, these two have the top 2 matches on Cage Match. They're one last year, and then now they're one this year. And then you have the match in Stardom between Siri and Utami. That is the second in terms of just 2021 matches this year. Then behind that, very close behind that, is the tag team match at All Out with the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks. And then that's where Omega and Danielson comes in at fourth, just in the 2021 matches, Cage Match. So again, take that for what it's worth. Everyone has a different opinion on what you prefer in wrestling and what you will rate higher than other matches. But there's no doubt it's one of the best matches we've seen this year. And again, that gives you the motivation to want to see it again. And I have no doubt that when they do have this match again, that's where you kind of look at it and say, all right, what are the stakes going to be? What could they possibly do on a pay-per-view that does have a little less restrictions than an actual television format? I mean, these guys could go 60 minutes. Like we don't know, but we know that there's a lot more flexibility with what you could do with this match on a pay-per-view versus just a television show. But my goodness, they still found a way to make it work on TV. And it was one that was just really, really good stuff. And now, like we said, I think the biggest question is, where do things go from here? I mean, clearly, the post-match stuff, you had, the Super Click and all this get involved, and you've got, the you've got Jungle Boy and Christian. They're coming out to help Danielson, and so I think there's an interesting direction here, and maybe that is the obvious next step is to have this match again at Full Gear. We always been talking about it for a month now, but it's the whole Hangman Page thing. That's still the question, I think, of when he returns and all of that, and when do they have that match? I think that's still the thing that's hanging out there, because I don't think there's any doubt that once he does return, he's going to be the person that steps right into having a chance to, perhaps win the title. And it's just, how do they want to go about that? But they have no shortage of options here, especially after that match and the way they did it. So, Danielson has the claim that, he almost beat Omega. If he would have had 5 more minutes, he would have beat him. Or if he had, 1 more minute, not even that long, he could have beat him. He could have locked him, made him submit, all this for Omega. His claim is that he gave Danielson a chance and he didn't beat him, even for the time limit. So they're going to do this again. I think it's just when are they going to do it, and what are the stakes involved? I think there's no doubt that they're going to have a chance to make this pretty special when they do it again. But they also did, sort of stick to the ranking system and all that. Like, you didn't have Danielson come in right away and challenge for the title because that would not have played into the ranking system. And so he was a newcomer. He's not ranked at the top of the rankings. So that was at least something they stuck to. I give them credit for that because I think navigating the ranking system is not always easy to do. I think sometimes it's a hindrance more than it helps. But it's in place for a reason, and I will give them credit. They at least try to, navigate around it the best they can. Even in some situations, like this, where there's no doubt if Danielson walks into the building, people are like, all right, we want to see him challenge for the title. We know who cares about the rating system and all this other stuff. But it is what it is. So anyway, slice it. This was just fantastic work from, again, two of the best in the world. And there is no doubt that we will be seeing this match again in AEW at some point in the near future. I think it's just a matter of when do they do the match? What is involved, and if you put this on pay-per-view after what people just got for free as the appetizer, I guess, if that's the appetizer, and you put the main course on pay-per-view, gonna be a lot of people running ready to sign up for that one because it should be just as good, or like I said, even better, perhaps with the less restrictions involved with pay-per-view. But before we get into looking at Extreme Rules and what we could expect from that pay-per-view in WWE, let's talk to you about our friends over at Manscaped, because support for 411 Wrestling is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. They are the champions of the world, and Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They just launched this 4th-generation trimmer we keep talking about, the Lawnmower 4.0. The 4.0, folks, not 3.0, not 2.0, not 1.0, the 4.0. And you can join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped just with this exclusive offer we have just for you. 20% off and free shipping worldwide with the code 411wrestling at manscaped.com. I keep talking to you about it. One of the first people who's had a chance to try this Lawnmower 4.0, just blown away by the performance, the craftsmanship, the details. This thing has it all. It's all on the next level. So if you want to be more confident, you're worried about these accidents, these grooming accidents, all this other stuff, you don't have to worry about that with the Lawnmower 4.0. The details, the craftsmanship, the way they built this thing is just incredible. And, it's got all this different stuff. The cutting-edge ceramic blade reduces those grooming accidents. The advanced skin-safe technology, you can have that confidence, like we said. Not a lot of room for error when we're talking about shaving below the waist, but you've got that here with the Lawnmower 4.0. And it's got the travel lock, so people who like to travel, great for those people as well. The LED spotlight, we keep talking about the 4000K LED spotlight, more precise shave. You can get it if you want it. And it's got the wireless charging, helps the battery length last longer, so you can take your time because Manscaped does have you covered. And as we always talk about, if you're still shaving your face and body with the same trimmer, you're doing it all wrong. Boost your confidence with this new body trimmer from Manscaped and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code 411wrestling at manscaped.com. Use the best tools for the job and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code 411wrestling at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code 411wrestling. Unlock your confidence with the new Lawnmower 4.0 from Manscaped. And let's talk about Extreme Rules because that will take place on Sunday, and it will go down at the Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio. The main event is set. It will be Roman Reigns defending the Universal Championship in an Extreme Rules match against Finn Balor, but not just Finn Balor, the Demon Finn Balor. And obviously, this is the match that really, this entire show is built around, knowing that, Roman is the man. He is the head of the table, as we know. And I think the issue you have here is kind of what we talked about probably for months now, is you've pretty much built it to the point, and this, I mean, I understand, like, it's hard to kind of dissect this because on the one hand, you want to build as big of a star as you can, right? Like Roman Reigns is the as big as he's ever been at this point. And the reason why is that he just continues to win. He continues to find ways to defeat his opponents. But at a certain point, what we've said is that believability that certain people are going to beat Roman Reigns, that goes out the window. And I think here, WWE is kind of in that position where it's like, well, you bring back the Demon to kind of add perhaps that element of possibility that Finn Balor could be the one to beat Roman Reigns. Because if you just did this as Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor, there's just not, and this is not a knock on Finn Balor. It's just, we've seen the setup before, and we've seen this so many times since this title reign started for Roman Reigns a year ago that, it's just kind of at this point you're thinking, all right, they've got to find ways to actually make me think there is even the slightest chance that Roman Reigns could lose the Universal Championship. And I think that's where we're at now and look, by the way, too, it doesn't help that they've already announced the match between Reigns and Lesnar for Saudi Arabia. Why? I mean, I know why they did it. I get why they did it from a business standpoint. You want to have that advertised as far out as you can, but to do that as close to this Extreme Rules pay-per-view and this match with Finn Balor, I mean, it's basically saying, hey, they may try to push it as though, okay, well, it could be Finn versus Brock in Saudi Arabia. I think for most people understand that that's not going to happen. It's going to be Reigns versus Lesnar. And so that does take part of that away here. I think the best you can do at this point is just to do what they've done in some of the other matches, just get some of those near falls. Have Roman Reigns taking from the Kurt Angle school of near falls and just kicking out at 2.99, just to really hook you and make you think that this could actually happen. And that's where, for the most part, they've done a good job of that. I mean, Reigns' matches have been really good. And, not all have been what you would, compare to a Danielson and Omega like we talked about earlier, but they've been good matches. And I think that's, again, with this reign, that's as good as you can ask for. It's just to somehow hook people in with the story and make them think, not even just the win-loss portion of this, but just give people a story that they can sort of buy into and get invested in here. And, I've also heard the claim that, people talk about, well, you're bringing back the Demon here just to have the Demon lose. Well, yeah, I mean, that's something certainly that can be discussed. Otherwise just do it with Reigns versus Balor if the results are already in doubt and you don't want to beat the Demon. But I assume that there's just a lot of, and this is where I think the Extreme Rules stipulation comes into play here, where there's a lot of things you can do here probably to still protect the Demon aspect of Finn Balor's character and all that, just because there's a lot of possibilities with the Extreme Rules portion. Like you can bring out weapons, you can do a lot of different things. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they proceed with this one, because I think it would shock everyone if Balor does win the championship here. I just don't see it happening. And so yeah, I think it's still going to be, I mean, you've got two very talented, performers here in this match. So that's, like I mentioned, I think you at least know you're going to get something good out of this. But the result itself, as has been the case with, a lot of these matches that have involved Reigns, not every one of them, but most, I think, of the matches, you start to see the direction they're headed in here. And the most likely is you have the Reigns-Lesnar match in Saudi Arabia. We'll talk more about that one as we get closer, but I don't imagine you're going to see a switch there either. I think we all know where this is leading to. Whether, The Rock comes back at Survivor Series, whether The Rock comes back at some point in the near future. Do we get the Reigns versus Rock match? Is it some other sort of combination involving those two? I just think that's the ultimate destination here. And I don't know that means that Rock's going to beat Reigns, because I don't think that's the right call either. Then I think we're back to the square one in terms of who is going to be the person to beat Roman Reigns. That is still yet to be determined, and I can tell you right now, I don't think that I have a good answer to that question. We thought it might be Big E, and maybe it still is Big E. Maybe they just go all the way here with Big E, and Big E's the first. Maybe they do the one-on-one at Survivor Series, because they would be the two champions if that's who it is leading into the show. and you do Big E versus Reigns, and maybe that's Reigns losing his first match. Maybe it's not for the title. Maybe I don't know what they do, but that is I think still the big question of who is going to be the person that finally dethrones Roman Reigns. But said it for a while now. I just don't think that's going to be anytime soon. But could be wrong. We'll see. And I don't think it's going to be here at Extreme Rules with Finn Balor. So other matches on the card, I think, really realistically as of right now, and I'm recording this on Friday morning, so there could be more stuff added. As we know, sometimes that's the way it works. But Bianca Belair will challenge Becky Lynch for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And really, I mean, I think the two biggest sells on this show are SmackDown oriented because as of right now, there is no match with Big E. And I don't necessarily know that you would anticipate that being the case at this point, that they're going to have him on this card. So if you look at this, I mean, we all go back to SummerSlam, right? Like we talked about this on the podcast. We had a lot of thoughts on this, and I admitted, I just did not think this was necessarily going to be the right decision, the way they went about it at SummerSlam. Since that point, I think they've done some good things. I don't know that I am still of the opinion that it was the right move to do it the way they did it at SummerSlam, because Becky has made it work, I think, to an extent, because she's very charismatic and she's doing things well, and she's trying different stuff because she is trying to sort of play up that heel side and all of that. I still don't know that I'm just fully into it, and maybe I'm in the minority on that. I'm not sure, but I look at this match and I'm thinking, okay, what is the outcome here? Because I just don't, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see Bianca Belair winning this match. And if she doesn't, then it's like, okay, well, what's the next step then? Because if Bianca Belair doesn't win this match, it's just, where do you go from here? And I think that's the thing that I look at with this and wonder, okay, if this is kind of where things stand, and you came out of the match at SummerSlam thinking that the final point of all this, after Becky squashes Bianca, is that Bianca's going to get her comeuppance. Is that where this happens? I don't think so. And so I wonder, at what point does it all sort of make sense the way they did it at SummerSlam? Because right now I don't necessarily see that. Yes, like the crowd has been behind Bianca. We've seen that. And of course, we also saw it in Knoxville when they go to her hometown. And, certainly she's the biggest, she feels like the big, babyface star, and that's good. But there is still, I think, I don't even know what the number would be, but there is still a pretty good portion of the audience, I think, that wants to cheer Becky Lynch. And I think now you look at this match at Extreme Rules, and again, I could be wrong here, but I don't see Bianca Belair winning this. And if she doesn't, what is the sort of dynamic here? Do we get one where it's just, okay, maybe Becky cheats to win, and then that's supposed to make you feel even more, upset about kind of where things are at? I think there's just a lot of different things like that you look at and wonder, what's the next big step in the story? This is it, like this match at Extreme Rules. And I think it's going to be interesting, to kind of see what happens. And I just, you've seen Becky refusing these, chances and all this, but now, you finally get the match, and I'm curious. But I will say I'm at least invested in the fact that I'm curious to see what they do here, because I think there's a way to do it, probably to really, make this feel better than it did at SummerSlam for a lot of people. But I don't know exactly what that's going to look like from a WWE standpoint, and what they decide to do here, because I think it's a pretty important match for all parties involved. Because if you have Bianca win here, which I get, like, again, I mean, that would be big for Bianca and give her a kind of that revenge that she would want from just how things unfolded at SummerSlam. But now it's sort of, okay, if she loses here, then what? She will have lost twice to Becky. And then what do? Do you have the third match and then finally she wins? I think it's how they do it here. That's probably the biggest question is how do they go about this, more than necessarily perhaps the finish, because to pull up the betting odds, I think Becky is the odds-on favorite here to win this. But I'm interested. I will say that, and maybe that's all you need is to have people interested and curious how they're gonna pull this off. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I still think Becky wins here, but I am curious to see how they actually go about this, and can they protect all parties involved and have everyone come out of this looking better than they did going in? Because I don't think they did that at SummerSlam, and so I think that's the big challenge here with this match. And then we'll quickly kind of run through the rest of the card because I don't know that there's, again, a lot to really sink your teeth into on a lot of this other stuff. Charlotte and Alexa's probably the biggest one outside of this. When you think about it, and this is something where I think we're gonna put a theory to the test here with the WWE theory and everything. You have a Columbus, Ohio native in Alexa Bliss, who is going to be performing in her hometown, challenging for the Raw Women's Championship. Do they do the WWE trend of having people lose in their hometown? I don't know. That's going to be interesting here. Or do we have a new champion, or does Alexa beat Charlotte? I thought the promo segment, I talked about it on the podcast earlier in the week. I thought the promo segment they had between these two was really good. I mean, I know you saw the reports and the rumors out there about 1,500 people leaving and all this. I just don't. I'm not sure where that came from, but I thought it was pretty good. They gave him a little time. And I thought it just, it worked out pretty well. But I think now, again, and this is to me, it's like you have to look at WWE's history here and realize that for some reason they just find it very fascinating to have people lose in their hometowns. Not everyone, but in big spots sometimes they do this. And I think Charlotte, hasn't been the champion that long at this point. I don't know. I think this is a tough one to call. I'm probably still going to go with Charlotte here. I think she probably wins, but I actually think they did a pretty good job building this matchup. I'm not saying it was perfect, but I think they did a better job than expected building this up. And I'm sure we get some sort of interesting dynamics involved here after Charlotte, ripped off the doll's head and all this other stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff they're going to try to pull out here because it is an Extreme Rules too. So remember last year there was an eyeball extracted. So I don't know if anyone's getting an eyeball extracted here in this match, but I do think that they're going to probably come up with some pretty interesting stuff that probably non-wrestling related that will be involved in this match. That's just my guess. But this should be another one that I think you're kind of looking forward to. Maybe I don't know what you're going to get just from an actual wrestling match standpoint here, but there is a curiosity factor, and again that amounts for something. That's something. If you have people that are curious, I'm curious. I'm sure I'm not the only one. But I'm curious to see what they do here. But I'll pick Charlotte just because I'm going to stick with the theory that WWE doesn't want people to be happy in their hometown or come out victorious. It's kind of a joke, but we've seen that a lot over the years with some of this stuff. Not everyone, but some people have been put in that spot many times. So the other stuff on the card, Damian Priest going to defend the United States title against Jeff Hardy and Sheamus. I think Damian Priest wins this match. I don't really see a whole lot of other outcomes here. I know they added Jeff to the mix here, but I think that just prevents, your usual rematch, a one-on-one with Sheamus at this point. So I think it made sense that it'll make for an interesting match and should be a good match. I think this, could be one of the better matches on the card, even though it's not a big card. But I've been pleased with what I've seen from Damian Priest. I think he's someone I've talked about before. He's got it, whatever, however you want to define what it is. He's got it. And I think it's just how they continue to kind of help him build his character here moving forward. So I'll take Damian Priest in this one. I think that he should come out on top, retain the title. Elsewhere, the Usos taking on the Street Profits, and this is another one for the tag team titles, SmackDown Tag Team Championships. I think this is one where, again, you just kind of look at where things are at with the Bloodline at this point. I think you probably see the Usos win here. I don't anticipate the Street Profits winning the titles, but maybe they could, and maybe that starts to form a little bit of a break in things. I'm not sure, but I don't really see any reason to pick against the Usos here. And who knows? Maybe the Naomi stuff, all that. Perhaps she eventually joins the group. I wonder if any of that comes into play. I don't know if that'll be here, but that's something too that's still hanging out there. So I'm taking the Usos in that one. And then it is Liv Morgan taking on Carmella. I'll go with Liv Morgan in this one as well. I just think that this is, I'm glad they're at least giving, Liv Morgan a chance here. She's someone that I've talked about for a while. I mentioned I wrote that article. It's been probably, I think it was late last year now, maybe at this point, or early this year perhaps. Um, Talking about some of the more underrated people. And what do you know? Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan were two of those people, I think, of the seven that I listed. And Ruby Riott's now Ruby Soho and certainly excelling in AEW thus far. And I think Liv Morgan's just always someone like the crowd is really behind her, and she's had her opportunities and she's looked pretty good in some of the stuff that they put her in. And I think it's just give her more opportunities to do that. And so I'm fine with Liv Morgan having a match here. I think it's good. Gives you some, someone that can really, I think, kind of take that next step. And just, are they going to, eventually put her in a spot where she can be, a top star in the women's division? I think she's got that potential. But we'll see what happens this match. I think that'll tell us a lot, maybe about the direction that she heads in. But those are all the matches we have for Extreme Rules right now. Like we said, it wouldn't be surprising at all if there are other stuff added to the mix here. But we can only go with what we know right now, and that's that. So there's some thoughts on Extreme Rules, which again will take place on Sunday at the Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio. And of course, we'll have it all covered over at 41mania.com. Check out our live coverage of Extreme Rules over there on Sunday. Be sure to jump into the comments and have a fun discussion with other wrestling fans. And you can find all of our news, reviews, columns, everything else over on the site. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast, any podcast app you use. Search for 411 on Wrestling. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll have the link to that in the show notes as well. We do have some YouTube stuff coming up. I know I've been talking about that a couple weeks now, but we've been working on some things sort of behind the scenes to get some things going on YouTube with our video stuff. So you can find some of the videos I've done. I've done several thus far, but there'll be much more on the way here as we move forward. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. A lot of good stuff over there. And as always, we will have the link to the GoFundMe for Larry Zonka's family in the show notes. So be sure to continue to share and contribute to that if you can. And everything else, 411mania.com. But thanks as always for listening to the podcast. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you next time here on the 411 on Wrestling Podcast.